I'm here with Steve Cheseborough, and we're going to talk about blues traveling, the holy sites of Delta blues. And we're also going to talk about something extraordinary that Steve's about to embark on, and that is the process of traveling through Mississippi and into part of Arkansas a little bit to re-document and check up on all those places that he's been to in this book. Welcome back to Mississippi, Steve.
Well, thank you. It's exciting to be here.
Cool. Now, when you've gone through this process before, describe just a little bit for people what you have to do to bring an edition up to date. This is the third edition of...
This is currently the one that you can buy now is the third, and we're going for a fourth. I'm working now update the information for a fourth edition that will come out early in 2018.
Okay, wow.
Uh-huh.
And so in the previous times when you've come to Mississippi, you've hit the state and you grab a rental car, and then what?
Well, you go around trying to find when I did, of course, the first edition was getting lost a lot and trying to find all these places and making it clear to my readers how to get to all these places. That was a big part of it, was giving clear directions to everything. Yeah. And I was just thinking, now that's not so important for a lot of places because everybody carries a navigation system on them now in their car or in their pocket. So directions aren't so important in general, although in some cases you're going way out in the country, especially trying to find a grave site.
That's it.
Even if you can find a cemetery with your GPS, as I always say, unfortunately they don't bury people in alphabetical order. So if you're trying to find a certain grave, that you might need directions to find the cemetery itself and or the grave itself. So it's like those kind of things.
Yeah.
And also there might not always be cell phone service in some parts of the state, I think, which I might get lost again on this trip because I rely on my phone, Google Maps, to get me a lot of places. So we'll see how I do with it.
Sometimes you'll find way out in the country there are elements of Google Maps that suddenly sort of disappear. Here there be monsters or something like that. So it's going to still be critical to have those directions that are in your book. I want to tell you that I think it was the second edition. We've sort of color-coded these. The first edition was orange, right? It had a little bit of orange on the paperback cover. The second edition had that navy blue cover, and then this one has the hunter green or the dark green.
I always think of them in terms of the artist who's on. That we had Son Thomas on the first one, and Eddie Cusick on the second one, and T. Model Ford on the third one. I kind of go by those.
Okay, well, we were using the Son Thomas edition, and some pals of mine came from Virginia, and I brought the book home from the press, because that's what they wanted to do, was blues travel. They wanted to spend a whole weekend blazing up and down the Delta, and I thought, okay, well, I'll bring the book home. Well, they brought the book with them, and they had that book earmarked and tagged. There were all these tabs.
Wait, they already had the book?
They already had the book, all tabbied, all marked up. And so we went blazing into the Delta, and we used your book, and we found the most amazing and obscure things. Everything in the book worked spectacularly. And what I'm saying is we did a lot of kitchen testing.
Excellent.
And they were so happy. They were just, it was a joyous time. It was so much fun to do that, and it was so fulfilling as a publisher to do this with pals, from Virginia, from far away, and they were discovering things that they'd always wanted to behold. And we had, behind us, we noticed there was always this other little crew of people in sort of a white Toyota van, and they were dressed, he had a funny little derby cap on.
You were being followed by the FBI?
No. And finally, at one of the plantation sites, or at one of the mills, or one of the gins, we found this gentleman there, instead of being right behind us, right when we got there. And so we began to talk to them. He was from Scotland, and he also had blues traveling in his hand, and was bouncing around doing the same thing. So kitchen tested, the book works, and it does find all those really, really nifty sites that I don't know how else you would find. There's no way that some of the purported, say, Robert Johnson grave sites, there's no way you're going to find that with a GPS. You know.
True.
Yeah.
And actually, one new thing that I think is going to be in this edition is a place that I haven't been to before, but I recently found out about a cemetery. Not another Robert Johnson grave, but a cemetery that Robert Johnson used to hang out at while he was alive.
Oh my goodness.
Near Crystal Springs in a little town there, and that's where Robert Johnson had a personal crisis. His young wife died in childbirth. Robert Johnson was 19, he was married to a 16-year-old woman. She died in childbirth. I always tell people that's the real crossroads. When people ask, what about Robert Johnson going to the crossroads and meeting the devil? I said, well, he didn't exactly meet it, but he came to a crossroads in his life, like a lot of us do when you make a decision. Well, his wife and child died. That obviously is a huge tragedy. And he decided to go back down to the part of the state that he grew up in, around Hazelhurst, Mississippi, was his hometown, which is near Crystal Springs. And he wanted to try to meet his real father, who he had not grown up with. I'm not sure if he ever met him, but he met kind of a father figure, an older musician named Ike Zinnerman, which is, despite his name, he's actually an African-American from Alabama with the name Ike Zinnerman that sounds kind of like...
Yeah, like someone from Wisconsin, doesn't it?
Northeastern or something.
Yeah.
But he met him and took guitar lessons from him and Robert already was a musician, but he became, I believe at that point, a serious musician. Instead of having a family to support, he was going to probably be a farmer who we never would have heard of and play a little music on the side. He went back down, met this guy, and started taking lessons and practicing intensely. That's when he became the Robert Johnson that we all would know later.
Wow.
And apparently they hung out in a graveyard and practiced there, like into the wee hours. And in that, I'm going to try to find that graveyard. I think that's a great thing if people want to try to get in touch with the Robert Johnson myth, to go to that. If there's a real crossroads where Robert Johnson didn't meet the devil but met his art.
That is talent.
That's where it
Oh
was,
my gosh,
you know.
that's really great.
So-
That's really great.
So that, I'm excited about going there, and hopefully I'll share that with all my readers in the new edition here.
Good.
Okay.
Now there's some other things you're going to share in the new edition. It's expanding a little, and Mississippi's blues knowledge expands, I think. So Meridian, what's happening new in Meridian?
Right, which I've always had a chapter on Meridian in this
Yeah.
book, and I always wondered how many of the people who use this book actually go there, because it's kind of out of the way if you're trucking around in the Delta to go to Meridian, which is a different part of the state, and it's associated with a great figure of American music, Jimmie Rodgers, the singing brakeman, who was a white man who learned to sing and play the blues in his own way and added a yodel to it, which is kind of odd. I'm not sure he actually originated that, but that's what he became renowned for and very famous for. He was like a huge popular star. Like he would be like the Frank Sinatra or the Elvis Presley of his era. He was that famous.
Or really, Hank Williams Sr. would be a
Yeah.
kind of level of star. A lot of people would show up if they knew that he was...
I think more so. He was more of a pop star, where Hank Williams was like a country star. They called Jimmie Rodgers the father of country music, but that's because there wasn't a separate category of country music really to most people then. He was a real pop star of his day and died, unfortunately, young, like so many of our heroes seem to do. But yeah, he's associated with Meridian.
Okay.
His grave is there, and there's a little museum there. But now they're developing a new music museum that I just found out about there, which I won't get to visit, unfortunately, this week because it's not there yet. But I'll find out about it and put some information out about that in the book.
Right.
And I understand there's a new music club there, too, so that might be getting to be a more happening place, and hopefully some of my readers will venture over to Meridian.
Right on. Now, so when you find a new club like that, you like to get that in the book. Do you also go back and check up on old clubs that are in the book? Because we all know that, you know, the business, music business, live music business is rocky.
They come and go, and
They come and go.
like in Jackson, I already found out that a lot of the places, Hal and Mal's is still there.
Yeah.
The Queen of Hearts is still there, which is a real urban juke joint in in Jackson, which is great. That's still going. In fact, Dorothy Moore, who lives here, is going to have her 70th birthday party there. I'm going to come back to Jackson for that event. It actually is coming up while I'm here, so that's cool.
Well, perfect.
But other clubs that I had listed in Jackson, most of them are no longer operating, or even the building's gone. Of course, the Great Subway Lounge is gone. That was a great blues spot here. But even newer places like Schimmel's, which had kind of taken over and was having a Subway Lounge night and presenting blues, I understand that's gone.
Yeah. So you always have your work cut out for you, don't you?
Music clubs. I mean, that's one of the main things people want to go to. But yeah, I should also reinforce the idea. Make sure you call ahead, and don't expect that the club is necessarily going to be there. And of course, the club could be there, but it could have changed their format. If I say it's presenting blues, they might not. So that's something you do need to check up on those.
And I really like, that brings me to the part of the book that I really liked, is that you've got a nice sort of beginner's manual for every reader coming to the Mississippi Delta. And I thought that was so worthwhile, because you talk about things to do and things not to do. For example, if you can play a few chords on the guitar, that doesn't mean you should rush the stage between songs and see if you can get up on stage and join the band.
Right.
Right.
That might be your dream to do that, but is it the dream of all the other people in the club to hear you?
Or the musician, for whom the guitar may be one of the more valuable things they have on their person.
Or your kid. That seems to be, and I'm sure some people...
Oh, your kid,
That seems to be a new trend, or it was probably even more now, of people who come in, my son or daughter is, my 13-year-old I brought along, who's an aspiring blues musician. Is it okay if he plays? And they manage to push their kid up on stage, which I don't know. I'm sure people will still do it, and I can't talk them out of it. But to me, your kid, the young musician, might get more from sitting and listening to the person who's already the experienced musician who's up there. Take notes on that. Talk to him. Maybe. That might be even a better experience for him or her than to have to get up and play just so you can get it on your Facebook page or something. I mean, really think about the real learning Traditionally, young musicians learn by listening to their elders, not necessarily by jumping up on stage as soon as they can play a few chords. So anyway, but I'm sure nobody will listen to my advice on that one.
Well, it's in the book, and it's at the front of the book, and I always thought that was a really good thing to do, because it gave people it gave people some very practical advice. Like you said just a second ago, call ahead. See what's happening that week. Even a website for a club may not be updated, but the phone
or whatever. You're going to go out of your way. Sometimes as you're blues traveling, you have to slow down a little bit. The pace of life still is a little slower here than if you're from New York or London or Tokyo or wherever you're from. Things might not be open. You might sometimes drive for an hour to get to a place that isn't open that day, or the person you thought you wanted to hear just isn't there.
Didn't show up.
That's okay. Just relax and smile and go on to the next place, or wait. If maybe you might spend an extra day. Maybe the person's coming back. It might be worth you spending an extra day, even though you thought you were only going to have to spend an hour there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the towns where you feel like, okay, this is where someone who doesn't have a week to do this.
Oh, the quickies.
The quickies. Like what town could you land in and really pack in some great blues experience in, say, 24 hours?
Well, good question. Actually, Jackson is not bad.
Okay.
Jackson is not in the Delta, but it's a city that has a lot of blues heritage, and it always has at least a couple clubs and things going on here, and some great musicians who live here. We already mentioned Dorothy Moore. My friend Ben Payton, who's a great local blues musician you might not even know about. He's usually playing somewhere around here. Bobby Rush lives here in town. He might be on the road, but he's Jesse Robinson. We just have a lot of good blues right here in Jackson. Clarksdale, of course, in the Delta has tried to make music happen. They've tried to make it so that there is music there a lot, even though it's a small town. It's in the Delta, but they've really worked to get, there's like a little juke joint, Reds, that's still somehow standing up, despite the roof falling in and stuff. And then there's a more modern blues club there, Ground Zero, that is more like a club than a juke joint, but that has a lot of music a lot, so that's a good place. You can usually find something going on there. Memphis, Tennessee is in another state, but it's definitely the tip of the Mississippi Delta, and that's traditionally where, you know, musicians would go up there and still do. There's always something going on there. The city I would say don't try to get into is New Orleans. Nothing wrong with New Orleans. I love New Orleans. Wonderful city, has of course wonderful music heritage and other heritage. It's not that close to here. You shouldn't try to do that necessarily on the same trip.
Right. Okay.
Stay around here in the Delta. Go to Memphis, go to Jackson, go to the Delta. Concentrate here. You don't have to drive all the way to New Orleans to hear music. Save that for another trip would be my advice.
Okay.
It's a different musical heritage. You might find some blues there. You'll find other music, but if you're really trying to do the Mississippi Delta experience, yeah, the Delta, some people just are confused about the geography. They know you learned in school, like the Nile Delta is where it empties into the sea. The Mississippi Delta is not where the Mississippi empties into the sea.
No.
We know the Delta's up here in the northwest part of the state of Mississippi.
It's sort of Memphis to Vicksburg
Right.
is about the most you can stretch it.
So do that, and then take a few side trips to maybe if you want to go to Meridian, Natchez, Jackson. Those cities have some nice attractions to go to. Oxford, places that are not part of the Delta that still are interesting to go to, but you don't have to go to New Orleans.
Okay.
To have fun on your trip.
We'll make sure and not share this with the New Orleans Tourism Board. But so you are taking right now the 3-week stint that it's going to take to get the next edition together. That's what you've got underway.
It's going to be a packed in 3 weeks, which I was already thinking I may have to extend my trip. I don't know if I can get it all in here.
And we should mention that the trip is made possible in large part by a wonderful gift from the Book Friends of the University Press of Mississippi, and that's such a great way to get to really change content and help a writer do exactly what they need to do.
I'm just overwhelmed by their generosity. In fact, I'm part of my trip. I'm going to come back to Jackson to go to their meeting and thank them in person. Actually, I'm just so, and I want to talk to them about the book and play them a few songs and just I just thought this is such a wonderful gift. It takes more than a little thank you card to thank them as much as I want to for this. So,
that'll be so great, and especially the playing part. There's a gift that you bring, because I sure have enjoyed listening to you play the few times that I've been able to catch you playing somewhere, and so that'll be a direct musical hard wiring into the network for them. They'll love that.
Thanks. Yes, and anybody watching this, yes, I am a working musician. You can look at my website, stevecheseborough.com, to see what I'm up to. I'll be playing a few places while I'm on this. I'm going to play at Cathead Music Store in Clarksdale at their mini blues fest. I'm going to play at that. I'm going to play at a brown bag presentation at the University of Mississippi at the Center for the Study of Southern Culture. I'm going to do a brown bag thing there and play some music and talk a little bit there. And then, private thing for the book. If you're a member of Book Friends, you're gonna get a little private show there too.
Great! Yay!
Those 3 things I'm going to be doing.
So when you've exhausted yourself researching, you'll get that guitar out, get that dobro out, and play a little bit.
Oh, well, certainly I'll be playing a lot wherever I go. Yeah, there might be some impromptu things going on. And I'm staying with a musician friend here, Ben Payton, who I said we've been doing a lot of playing over there already too. So good. There's always music part of it. And I encourage you, if you're a musician, even though we talked about you don't necessarily get up on stage, but certainly bring your guitar with you. There's plenty to inspire you to play. You might want to sit in certain spots, like we sit in the graveyard where Robert Johnson played.
The graveyard, indeed.
Or on the porch where John Hurt, his house, his little house that he used to live in and play on the porch is actually the John Hurt Museum up in Avalon, Mississippi. It's been moved from where it was because it was going to be torn down, but his granddaughter moved it to her property that's near there in Avalon, and and built a new porch. The porch, I think, had fallen apart, but they built a new one on the front of the actual building. You can sit there and pick your guitar. Talk about being connected to history and everything. To sit there and do that.
Yeah.
That I encourage everyone to do those kind of impromptu performances for yourself or your friends or whatever.
Good.
Who knows? Maybe you'll draw a crowd and make some tips while you're doing it.
Or at least you'll be in a space, where you can attach to Mississippi John Hurt and just get that feeling. Well, we've had a blast talking with Steve Cheseborough, and he's here in Mississippi to work on the 4th edition of Blues Traveling, the holy sites of the Delta Blues. Thanks a ton, Steve.
Oh, you're welcome, and please get a copy of the book and put it to good use. Come down and travel around and have fun.
Come on and wear it out. Okay, super. Thank you, Steve.
All right, you're welcome.